Warriors fans, the crazy part about this whole sequence is how different the situation looks compared to just 72 hours earlier. LeBron James had picked Philadelphia, Golden State had come up short, and Draymond Green had already made a major financial decision by declining his $27.6 million player option to create flexibility for the LeBron pursuit. Then, after that plan fell apart, Draymond agreed to return on a one-year $27.7 million contract, with Rich Paul confirming the deal to Shams. At that point, it felt like Golden State's consolation prize was simply bringing back somebody they already had. Then, everything changed at 2:38 that afternoon during a live First Take Now cut-in. Shams Charania came through with news that nobody in this fan base was expecting. DeMar DeRozan is signing with the Golden State Warriors. And the obvious question immediately became, how in the world did Golden State make that happen while operating under hard cap restrictions? That's the part that makes this move so interesting, because Shams explained the specific mechanism that gave the Warriors enough room to actually bring DeRozan aboard. There was also another development just 17 minutes later, when Draymond Green posted from his personal account about a teammate he has publicly respected for years. That reaction gave another glimpse into how the veteran leadership inside that locker room views the addition. So let's rewind to how this announcement actually unfolded. Molly Kareem was hosting First Take Now and discussing the aftermath of Draymond's new contract when she suddenly got word from the control room that breaking news was coming. She stopped the discussion, announced they were going straight to Shams, and the broadcast immediately cut over. Shams then explained why this move was possible despite the Golden State's difficult cap situation. According to his report, Draymond agreeing to a one-year structure instead of the longer deal some people had expected created a narrow window of minimum salary flexibility. Golden State's front office moved quickly once that opening appeared. Mike Dunleavy Jr. contacted DeMar DeRozan's camp within 48 hours of Draymond's deal being finalized. DeRozan had reportedly been weighing 4 publicly reported suitors, and none of those options had emerged as an obvious choice for him. Golden State, however, presented him with a clearly defined role as the 6th man. The plan would have him leading the second unit while providing legitimate shot creation alongside a supporting cast capable of spacing the floor around him in a way his previous situation in Sacramento did not. And according to Shams, this is a minimum salary agreement that has already been finalized and is expected to be formally announced this week. So when you look at the timing, the Draymond contract wasn't simply Golden State bringing one of its veterans back. The structure of that deal directly created the narrow minimum salary flexibility that allowed the Warriors to make a run at DeRozan in the first place.
The cap situation here is incredibly specific because the structure of one deal created the opening for an entirely different move just days later. That kind of detail doesn't come from somebody guessing at the numbers, it comes from tracing exactly how the money moved inside the Warriors situation. Then, just 17 minutes after the DeRozan news broke, Draymond Green made his own reaction public. And considering Draymond's history of praising DeRozan's game, his message carried some real significance. He welcomed DeMar to the Warriors while highlighting the scoring ability he has been talking about for years. That wasn't some basic social media congratulations. Draymond specifically pointed to DeRozan's mid-range game and what he could bring to the second unit, which lines up with the respect he has previously shown for DeRozan during media appearances and podcasts. That's a pretty strong endorsement from a veteran leader who has clearly valued this player's ability for a long time. But now comes the part that makes the move really interesting. Golden State just missed out on LeBron, the roster is hard-capped, and Steph Curry is 38, so why would DeRozan choose this situation over 4 other reported suitors that could potentially offer him more consistent playing time? The answer comes down to what DeRozan appears to be prioritizing at this point in his career. It's not simply about money or maximizing minutes. The bigger goal is having a legitimate chance to compete for a championship. Reports had indicated that DeRozan was willing to take a minimum deal specifically for that opportunity. And when you compare his reported options, Golden State still stands out because none of the other 4 entered this offseason looking like a more convincing title contender. Miami and Cleveland are still trying to determine what their ceiling looks like after missing on LeBron. Washington is rebuilding, and Denver has its own complications. The Warriors, meanwhile, still have Steph Curry, Draymond Green, and a proven core that recently made a deep playoff run. On paper, that still puts Golden State among the more credible championship threats in the Western Conference. And once you look at the actual role DeRozan is expected to fill, this starts looking less like a backup plan and more like a situation that could make sense for him. The biggest reason is something Golden State has struggled with in recent postseasons: second-unit offense. When Steph leaves the floor, the Warriors have gone through stretches where the offense completely stalls because there isn't a dependable half-court creator to keep things moving. That is exactly where DeRozan can make an impact. Even at 36, he remains a reliable scorer who can manufacture his own offense through isolation, mid-range scoring, and shot creation without needing a specific system or play call to get him going.
Putting DeRozan in charge of the second unit gives Golden State an answer to the offensive problem that has followed this roster through multiple postseasons. Instead of asking the bench to survive whenever Curry sits, the Warriors would have a proven scorer capable of carrying that group. The second reason is where the fit with Steve Kerr becomes even more interesting. DeRozan isn't dependent on being a traditional floor spacer, and his style can be especially effective against bench-heavy defensive groups. Those are exactly the kinds of matchups he would see while leading Golden State's second unit. His footwork, patience, and ability to create shots from his preferred spots become much more valuable when he isn't constantly dealing with an opponent's best individual defender. That lines up directly with what Kerr needs, considering Golden State's bench has struggled to consistently create offense without Curry in recent seasons. But before getting into the third reason, I want to hear from Dub Nation. Does adding DeRozan on a minimum deal make you feel better about this roster after the LeBron miss? Or do you still believe Golden State needs another major addition to raise its ceiling? Because that's going to be an interesting debate among Warriors fans, and I definitely want to see where you stand. Now let's get to reason number 3, because this is where the entire move connects back to Draymond Green. The key is the narrow amount of minimum salary flexibility created by the exact structure of Draymond's one-year contract. And when you really look at that, the cap mechanics become the most fascinating part of this entire sequence. If Draymond had instead taken a longer-term deal with more guaranteed money, Golden State's hard cap situation could have been structured differently and potentially eliminated the minimum salary slot Dunleavy ultimately used for DeRozan. Instead, the one-year structure of Draymond's return, which Shams had reported days earlier, created the room necessary for Golden State to bring in another veteran on a minimum deal without crossing the second apron. So these weren't simply two separate moves that happened to land in the same week. The way Draymond's contract was structured directly helped make the DeRozan addition possible. That connection is the important part, because it goes beyond simply reporting who signed with whom. When an insider can explain not only the transaction itself, but also how one move mechanically created the opening for the next, that points to a much deeper understanding of the cap situation. And that brings us to the other side of the conversation, because Stephen A. Smith was far less impressed with what Golden State had done. His argument was basically this: LeBron just chose Philly over the Warriors, and the response is adding DeMar DeRozan on a minimum deal? Curry is 38, Draymond is 36, and now Golden State is bringing in another 36-year-old who doesn't even provide three-point shooting. From Stephen A's perspective, that simply isn't enough to call this a championship roster.
Stephen A. Smith's point is pretty simple. Golden State is starting to look like a veteran retirement home built around an elite point guard. And honestly, the age concern is fair. Curry, Draymond Green, and DeMar DeRozan are all on the older side, and having that much age concentrated among major rotation pieces creates legitimate questions about durability over 82 games, and then a playoff run. But there's an important distinction here, because Golden State isn't asking DeMar DeRozan to carry a massive workload every night. The plan is reportedly for him to operate as the sixth man and lead the second unit, which is a much more manageable assignment for a 36-year-old than being a full-time starter. The Warriors aren't expecting DeRozan to recreate what he was doing 5 years ago while playing heavy minutes. They're betting that he can still provide what he does best as a scorer, but in a controlled role that puts his strengths front and center while limiting the physical demands. That's the difference between how Stephen A. is looking at this move and how Steve Kerr and Mike Dunleavy Jr. can actually use him. Stephen A. is judging DeRozan like a traditional starter, while Golden State is treating him like a specialized scoring weapon. There's also something else worth paying attention to, and that's the relationship between DeRozan and Draymond. These two have had genuine respect for each other for years, with both players publicly praising the other's game and competitive mindset across different media appearances. So this isn't a situation where two random veterans are suddenly forced into the same locker room. They've already expressed admiration for each other, and Draymond made that clear again almost immediately after the news broke by publicly endorsing DeRozan. That type of existing respect can be extremely valuable when a veteran player is taking on a different role late in his career. Still, Golden State has a real vulnerability here. The Warriors now have 3 meaningful rotation players over 35, and no amount of careful minute management completely removes the physical demands of an 82-game schedule followed by the playoffs. If Curry, Draymond, or DeRozan suffers a major injury at the wrong time, the margin for error gets much smaller. That's the risk that comes with adding more veterans to an already aging core. But ultimately, DeRozan's value to this roster is pretty clear. He gives Golden State another answer for the second unit scoring problems that have hurt them in recent postseasons, and his ability to create his own shot against bench-heavy lineups makes the fit easy to understand. Then you have SHAMS explaining the specific cap mechanics connecting Draymond's contract structure to DeRozan's signing, along with Draymond immediately giving DeMar a detailed public cosign. Now, the next thing to watch is how Steve Kerr actually builds the second unit around DeRozan. And once that happens, the bigger question becomes whether Golden State has enough flexibility left under the hard cap to make another addition. So make sure you're subscribed, because that's the next part of this story. For now, let me know what you think in the comments, hit that like button, and stay locked in, Dub Nation. LeBron chose Philadelphia, Draymond came back, and suddenly Golden State's second unit looks a whole lot more dangerous. What a summer!